So it's kind of like a dream that maybe you've had before, where in the dream, you realize you're naked. So you're at school, you're at work, something like that, and you look down and you go, oh my goodness, I'm buck naked. And you're like on a stage, or you're in the office, or you're at school, and the only thing you're thinking in the dream is, good God, people are going, I don't want people to realize that I'm walking around here naked. So that's a high anxiety creating situation. People who believe they're worthless are walking around with that anxiety upon them all the time. They're worthless. They're expecting everything to confirm that they're worthless, but that's not what they're hoping. What they're hoping is that, good God, please don't recognize, don't notice, or don't realize that I'm worthless. That is a very high anxiety creating situation. People who believe they are worthless are walking around with that anxiety upon them all the time, constantly worried, constantly stressing about pleasing others, about being accepted, about being loved, and terrified instead that people will see the truth. We got to put that in air quotes because it's not the real truth. It's just the truth as you believe it. But you're terrified that people will see the truth, air quotes, that you're worthless, and how humiliating that will be. You got to tap into those feelings of humiliation. We've talked about it in the past. If you've ever been humiliated, and I'm sure that many of you have, it's so terrible that human beings are willing to do anything to avoid experiencing that emotion. And when you walk around believing that you're worthless, but desperately hoping that people won't notice, there's always that danger that they will notice, or, they will seem to confirm it to you, because you're already viewing every single negative thing as confirmation of what you already believe. So if they seem to confirm it, it's humiliating. In the past, I've talked about, think about a teenage boy going up who lives with an emotional disorder, going up and asking a girl out on a date, and she turns him down. She might have a million, trillion, cajillion reasons for why she can't go on that date. Maybe even if she's already got a boyfriend, perfectly legitimate reason for why she would turn down the date from the boy. He doesn't see the legitimacy in that. All he sees is the confirmation of what he already believes. Of course she said no. Of course she said no. And his body flushes with shame. It just flushes. The heat comes up through his body. That shame telling him, you see there? I told you so. And that is humiliating. So the person then said, how come the anxiety mostly happens when I'm worried about a health issue? Like, for example, I have a lower back muscle strain, and it's been there for a few months, and that gives me anxiety. Here's the reason for that. A person who lives on a foundation of shame perceives vulnerabilities, and particularly like health issues and weaknesses, as confirmation of worthlessness, like we were just talking about. Think about it. On some level, she says to herself, this will reveal to people what I already know about myself. It's an outward display. It's not something hidden inside of her. This is a physical thing that is now visible to others. A weakness, a vulnerability. So her brain says this is going to reveal, they're going to see this vulnerability, which will reveal to them what I already know about myself, that I'm defective, that I'm imperfect, that I'm flawed, that I'm bad. Remember what my fear is and what my greatest hope is. My fear is that people will see that I am worthless. I'm defective. I'm bad. And what does a vulnerability or a weakness, what is that? It's an outward display that others can perceive, and the person who has the emotional disorder is terrified that this will reveal to them what you already know, that you are defective. And that creates humiliation. You know, I used to think like, man, what if I passed out in a store or something? I'd just rather die. Just rather die. You know, if you break your leg or something, you can pretend like it don't hurt. Now that I'm talking about this, I remember wiping out on a bicycle one time. I was showing off in this neighborhood. We didn't live in town, but every once in a while we'd go to town, right? And there were people that we visited there. And I was riding this bicycle through town, and I was showing off riding the bike with no hands, and hit a rock or something, and the handlebars went zoop, and I went flying down, and I mean, I got tangled up in that bike. I ripped myself to bits. I knew all these people were watching, and in the agony that I was experiencing, I jumped up, pretended like I was not hurt, even though I was seriously hurt, trying to walk as natural as possible and not allow them to see that I was hurt, because that was humiliating to me. Oh, it was so humiliating. Not the fact that I wiped out while I was showing off, although that was very humiliating, but the vulnerability. For them to be allowed to see that I am hurt. Terribly, terribly shameful, terribly humiliating.